Hello fellow creatives, it is I, ForgettableOtaku, back for my second video, and I just want to say thank you all so much for the support I've gotten on the first one. I was expecting it to just be watched by my nana and my best friend, and you guys have all been so nice to me, thank you. But anyway, today we are going to be discussing a few different ways to come up with story ideas. Story ideas are simultaneously one of the easiest parts of the creative process and one of the hardest. Most of us probably have hundreds of ideas in our head or ideas that we've left for another day, but often we still stare into the abyss trying to come up with an idea to no avail. In my experience, it is most difficult to come up with story ideas for smaller projects or anything that is specific like a competition because you likely have to come up with something from scratch. It is also the least organic method of coming up with ideas because you have to put yourself on the spot rather than just coming up with an idea naturally or randomly. But fear not, for I, ForgettableOtaku, have come up with a guide for coming up with ideas from scratch. The first method is what I'm calling the fusion method. This is where you take two or more pieces of media and come up with an idea that combines them. For this method, I would recommend creating a list of various works you like, and then going through and picking two at a time and writing a few different ideas as to how you could combine them. Feel free to combine media that is completely different from what you plan to write. For example, for my upcoming one-shot, I used this method to come up with the story idea, and my list contained anything from films, anime, video games, books, and even Dungeons and Dragons. Explore things intended for different audiences, like Monster High with Lord of the Rings, and this can help come up with something different from your peers. Most people consume media with the same primary genres and demographics. I know I mostly consume shonen and fantasy media intended for male audiences, so intentionally considering media for, say, a female audience can help me to stand out from other creators who likely have similar interests. It's okay if you can't think up of anything that's completely different from other list items. It's not essential, it can just help to broaden what potential ideas can be. If your two influences are too similar, it could limit potential ideas, like if you combine My Hero Academia with Naruto, as My Hero Academia is already heavily inspired by Naruto, and most fans of one have likely read the other. If you're struggling to think of media to put in the list, I recommend looking through your My Anime list if you have one, or browsing Netflix, as it'll help you to remember what things you've watched. Also, if you've got a bookshelf, it always helps to just look. Just if you've got anywhere that gives you an idea of what you have and haven't seen, it might help you to remember, oh yeah, I've watched this before, so that you can potentially use it for inspiration. Okay, so once you have your list of series picked out, pick out two random series and try to combine them together and come up with at least two potential ideas from the combination. For example, if I were to combine Percy Jackson with Danganronpa, one idea that I could come up with is that the 12 gods of Olympus have been held hostage and are forced to work together to escape. This takes the Greek mythology elements of Percy Jackson and combines it with Danganronpa's escape room-like setting. This also leaves the idea fairly open to move away from the influences into something completely new. Another direction I could potentially take this idea is that a god has been murdered in the modern day, and our protagonist is trying to investigate and find the truth of the case. Perhaps the dead god is their parent. This still combines the ideas, but takes it into a completely different direction to what the other idea had. And then you just rinse and repeat until you have an idea that you want to work with and that suits the project you're working on. Okay, so we're moving on to the next method. It's called the Steal Ideas from Kind Souls on the Internet. For you see, many before you have struggled with this exact issue, so there are a myriad of prompts intended for this very purpose. If you Google story prompts, you will find website after website with massive lists of stories. Pinterest also has a ton if you want to gather them in one place, put them into a board all in one spot. Writing prompts from Tumblr is also another great source. And there are even prompt generators online. Readsy has one, Random Word Generator does as well, and there are a lot of pre-existing ideas out there for the taking. Another thing I recommend doing is writing down ideas you have as you come up with them. If you don't want to carry around a physical notepad everywhere you go, every phone comes with a free notepad app for writing stuff down, and if you don't like them, there are plenty of free alternatives available. Plus, you can now just download Word or Google Docs onto your phone. The real world has plenty of inspiration, and you can come up with ideas at any time. Dreams, shower thoughts, watching wild stories on the news are all great ways to come up with ideas in your daily life. This method is good if you don't want to end up in this position where you need to think and need the other methods, as you'll have a catalog of existing ideas that you can draw upon at any time. Something I want to add to coming up with a story idea is a consideration of structure. Now, you don't necessarily need a structure or a plot to complement your idea, but it can be handy if a project has defined parameters that you need to adhere to. For manga artists, I would say that the main place this comes in handy is when coming up with one-shot. A manga one-shot is a comic that tells an entire story in a single issue or chapter. Typically, these are short and created for contests such as silent manga auditions, Saturday AMs, Summer of Manga, or Jump Tezuka. The reason why you want to consider structure when coming up with a one-shot idea is to ensure that your idea is compatible. 10 pages is not a lot to tell a complete story, and you don't want to be trying to cram the next one piece into such a page length. So you need to make sure that your idea is compatible before you start trying to write your story. So that's why considering your structure is important for certain projects. There are so many ways to structure a story, and it warrants its own discussion in several videos. But when it comes to coming up with your idea, consider the beginning, middle, and end of your story. This is also important information to have when pitching an idea to a publisher. And yeah, that's also something else that deserves its own video, as they're big discussions in their own right. Okay, so before I wrap up, I'm going to give one more bonus method of coming up with story ideas, that I'm going to dub the one-word mind map. This is just something I've just invented and works like this. Write down a random word, for example, lemon. I'm intentionally using something that sounds like you're not going to get a decent story idea from it. Now set a timer. It doesn't really matter how long it is. This is more to create pressure and force yourself to just dump stuff onto the page. Next, you're going to write down random questions and ideas that just pop into your mind about how you could make a story and featuring something about the word. For example, with lemon, some questions that's like, what would life be like if I was a lemon? What do lemons symbolize, and how could I craft a story using a lemon motif? Lemons are sour. Maybe I could write about a sour character. Lemons are also yellow. Yellow usually represents happiness. Maybe I could write a story with a character that's really sour and one that's really happy. And this goes on. For example, another thing that's cool is like things like thinking about superpowers. So maybe if I had like a lemon power, lemons have got like acidic, like you know how they hurt when you scars. So maybe they could squirt out lemon juice and like it's acidy. So yeah, like especially if you're coming up with superpowers, there's something to just be looking at random junk throughout your life. For example, Kohei Horikoshi came up with Gran Torino's power just from shower jets. But, I mean, you can use the same sort of thing for inspiration of any sort of magic, because superpowers are kind of like magic-y powers. And this idea, like, you know, random word can just be a fun exercise if you have writer's block, because it allows you to just unleash and get sort of outside of your head and just get some stuff down. And that will do for this video. I really hope that this helps you come up with some ideas. I encourage further research, and if you have any cool methods that you use that I didn't mention, please tell me in the comments, because the more methods, the merrier. Like, we all struggle with this, you know, the more you have, you know, the more tools we've got, the better. And also feel free to tell me about your story ideas and how you got inspired and what, you know, just anything you want to say about them. Feel free to write a novel in the comments. I read them all, and I will respond if I can think of anything constructive. If you've commented on my last video and I haven't responded, I've read it. I just can't think of anything valuable to say. I'm sorry. I can't always think of something. You know, I don't want to just always be saying, like, useless information. I want to add to the conversation, and sometimes I just can't think of anything. But yeah, thank you for watching to the end. Like, really, thank you so much. And like, you guys don't know how much this actually means to me. Like, I'm just a nobody, and the fact that like you're here watching a video I made, thank you. And I wish you all the best in your creative endeavors.